first of all, I wanted to ask you, what will be your legislative priority list? The General Assembly will be in session in a couple of weeks. What's on your priority list?
Well, exciting to move into 2025 after 2024 was our fourth best year for economic investment in the history of the Commonwealth. So the most important thing in 2025 is that we keep that going. We've now had the first, second, and fourth best years in our Commonwealth's history, and in that investment that helps create so many good jobs, that the main thing we've got to do is keep this train rolling, because this prosperity is reaching every part of Kentucky. Just last week, I was in Carter and Boyd counties celebrating 115 new AT&T jobs, and the announcement that there were going to be that many more. So when we look at how we keep that going, there's a couple of things we need to focus on. One is universal pre-K. And while that probably won't happen next year because it is a non-budget year, moving towards it in 2026 is critical. It is the single most effective thing we can do to get more people in the workforce. It's the single most effective thing we can do to make sure we don't lose part of our workforce before they ever get started. A little more than half of our children in Kentucky show up not ready for kindergarten every year, and some of them never catch up. On top of that, in this session, we ought to look at affordable housing. We'll have a few buckets of money that can be very effectively invested in existing programs like the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which leverages almost 9 private sector dollars for every 1 public dollar. Then we've got to make we've got to look at our infrastructure abroad, globally, for economic development. We have the fewest numbers of foreign offices where we're out there trying to generate jobs and investment than any of our surrounding states, even though we've got more foreign direct investment than just about all of our surrounding states. So those are just a couple of things we see in this upcoming session. Hopefully it'll be one focused on the people, focused on core issues like jobs, healthcare, infrastructure, public safety, and public education.
What about cutting taxes? Will you sign legislation for that?
I believe that we'll be able to cut the income tax again this coming year in this coming session. We have a booming economy. I mean, really exciting to see the things that are happening. And when we do, it makes sense to provide some tax relief. But what I'd say to everybody is all things have to be in balance. If the General Assembly takes this thing too fast, it cratered Kansas. They had to cut all their infrastructure spending. They didn't have any money for economic development incentives. Their Supreme Court said their funding for public education was so low it was unconstitutional. And so people need to understand that we can cut it some. But if the General Assembly decides they want to go to zero, one of two things are going to happen. Number one, we're not going to have the money for the safe roads and bridges, public safety, or public education. Or more likely, they're going to jack up your taxes in terms of sales tax. When things already cost too much, they would cost more. I believe that we need a balance, and that it's appropriate to do it in this session. But I think we need to be open and honest with people about the impacts that it might have in future sessions.
So closely watching it, do all things in moderation.
Yeah, in this session with our booming economy, I think we can lower the income tax. I think it's going to be challenging in the future. And so just want people to see that there's a right balance, a right place to get where our income taxes are low. But if you drive them to zero, we risk upending this great economy we've worked to build.
Speaking of the great economy, I know every time I cover a visit of yours, you know, you're talking about the great economy. There was Senator Wise, Max Wise, wrote a op-ed called The Bluegrass Blueprint for Growth. He said in here, despite setbacks from COVID and heavy-handed executive branch mandates, our economic progress has remained steady. The Republican supermajority's pro-business policies, including right to work and fiscal discipline, have been revolutionary. Is that correct? I mean, what's your reaction?
Well, I haven't had a single business talk to me about right to work, and I talk to all of them before they come in. Listen, economic development is a team sport with $35 billion of private sector investment in the last 5 years, a record for any governor. There's enough credit to go around. Credit should go to local county judges, mayors, magistrates, local chambers of commerce. And they and we do the hard work to make it happen. Listen, when one of these businesses is looking, they're looking at multiple states. We've got to meet with them and pitch a site. We've got to talk about how we get the water and sewer to it to have enough electricity. They want to look at the incentive package. They want to talk to us about environmental permitting and ultimately the building code and the building permits that are required. Those are all executive branch functions. I get that some people want to fight for some of the credit, but we go out and we do the hard work to make it happen. But at the end of the day, I'm less worried about credit than I am about that great job for my kids and everybody else's kids here in the Commonwealth.
But with all due respect, sir, when I listen to you talk about that, you talk about it in the context of Team Kentucky, which I get that and I understand that, but I have yet to see a politician, I guess, praise actions of the other party for good economic a good economic environment. Does that make sense?
My job is not to drive a state to the right or the left, but to move it forward. There is no Democrat or Republican job. There is no red or blue bridge unless we paint it that way. The things that matter most to Americans and to Kentuckians are their job, their next doctor's appointment, the roads and bridges they drive that day, their public school, and how safe they feel in their community. I know that's where I'm focused. If other people want to fight over credit or try to bring DC culture wars in, what they're doing is wasting time. We need to be focused on people's everyday concerns and make sure that we better the lives of our people.
So with this upcoming session coming up, what can you agree with the supermajority of what bills and issues?
Well, I think there's a number of places that we could potentially agree. We've been holding really constructive meetings. We all recognize the need for affordable housing. We recognize the need to continue building on our great economy. So we've had a chance to talk about a number of different changes we could make in the juvenile justice system. We meet regularly or semi-regularly, and we talk about these issues. Now, when you put a camera onto somebody in the middle of a session, rarely is somebody going to say that because unfortunately they get into the DC back and forth. But we do the hard work. We make sure we get it done. And at the end of the day, if some of the performances that happen take up the news, I'm not worried about the news. I'm worried about making progress for the people of Kentucky.
What about the people of Eastern Kentucky? Anything during the session that you'll fight for specifically for Eastern Kentucky? Anything on the horizon that we should look forward to next year?
Well, very excited about what's going on in Eastern Kentucky. Everything from the big grant we got for the Mountain Parkway, which unlocked an extra amount of money. It's about $260 to $270 million extra that's now going in to that project. That's going to open up Eastern Kentucky in very special ways. The first time ever that every section of the four-laning is now completed, under construction, or under contract. It is going to happen. Big year for SOAR, getting a $40 million federal grant to do workforce training that's out there. Also a big year just in general for Eastern Kentucky and the amount of jobs that have come and the amount of projects like that big Bell County energy storage project that was announced. It'll be over $1 billion and create 1,000+ construction jobs. As we move into this next year, we're going to continue to talk to the General Assembly about making some tweaks in prior legislation that have helped us rebuild after flooding. We have those 7 high ground sites. We're really excited about Skyview outside of Hazard. There's going to be a lot of building, especially this spring, as we're getting the roads done and all the infrastructure there. Chestnut Ridge in Knott County also really moving along. Cottages at Thompson Branch are probably going to be done this year in Letcher County, which is a smaller but a really important one. And just looking for some extra flexibility to move some of the other ones forward. The interest is really exciting. The interest from flood survivors about being a part of these new communities. I'm just really excited about what I'm seeing there, and these folks deserve the best. And when we dedicated the 10 houses in Wayland in Floyd County, I got to see kids run around and pick out their new rooms. And these are kids that have been without their own home for their family for 2+ years. So very excited about what we're going to see next year, a huge amount of construction in the East.
Now, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, that since the flooding, I think you had told me in a previous interview that we are like 75 or 80% back on the road to recovery. We still have a little bit more to do.
Well, we certainly have a lot to do. We've certainly brought in a lot of funding for the water and sewer systems that got washed out almost entirely. We're there on the bridges for the most part and their repair, as well as the roads, again, with some work to do here and there. Power, obviously restored. We're going to have more internet and high-speed internet, especially when the BEAD program kicks in this next year in Eastern Kentucky than ever before. All the high ground sites are going to be wired right from the start. But in terms of rebuilding houses, that's what we're really going to see this year. We're going to catch up really quickly because while we were able to rebuild 4 or 5 at a time in the West, we're going to have a lot more than that going up all at the same time in the East.
Anything else you want to add, sir?
Well, just excited about not only the way that we all work together to create more jobs in 2024, but we expanded healthcare with that new clinic in Maysville, with the UK St. Clair new relationship at a Moorhead. We moved infrastructure projects forward, like the Mountain Parkway, that are so critically important. On public safety, we saw drug overdose deaths go down for the 2nd straight year, thank God, and homicide rates we're down for what I think is the 3rd straight year. When we look at all of the things that come together to make people's lives better, I see Kentucky optimistic and hopeful, and we ought to be, because great things are happening, and they're happening for everybody, or at least we'll have the opportunity for everybody out there. So we got to make sure in 2025 that the national noise doesn't come to Kentucky, that the partisanship doesn't trip us up. We've got an amazing opportunity here, and I want to see it through.